Good Lord, McLaren has had a season this year. Not only is the F1 division finally taking pot shots at the Red Bull overlords and somehow making the 2024 Formula One season watchable again, but they seem to have a really consistent process going across the board for all of their motorsport divisions. From Formula One to Extreme E, even down to their pretty solid looking esports team. And when we talk about a successful startup, you can't go without mentioning their IndyCar team. I mean, what a lineup this year. Alexander Rossi, Pato O'Ward, my personal favorite, and David Malukas. Wait, okay, never mind. Alexander Rossi, Pato O'Ward, and Theo Pourchaire. Pretty good. Oh, you're kidding me. Okay, Alexander Rossi, Pato O'Ward, and Nolan Siegel? Fine, all right. So for 2025, McLaren is in a really good spot. 2 experienced race winners and a young upstart on the rise. Still a bit chaotic, but overall some pretty great options here. Oh, God. Okay, good Lord. I think we've got it now, and the best part is, at this point, it seems like they've got every single one of their first choices in a McLaren seat. Shit! Okay, so let's get real for a second. Obviously, McLaren has been a bit of a tornado when it comes to their IndyCar driver selection. Between a bunch of weirdly timed swaps and a pretty spicy lawsuit between them, Alex Palou, and Chip Ganassi Racing, the waters have not been all that clear in the McLaren paddock. But here's the thing, it might be a little bit more complicated than any of us realized. And if we're going to point to the source of all this chaos, I think we've all got to look at this guy. Before we do that, let's go way back to September 2023, when McLaren and David Malukas announced their new partnership for the 2024 season. By all accounts, it seemed like the smartest call for 2024, as he decimated the Indy NXT podium record in 2021 with 16 and finished second in the championship, until Malukas had a brutal mountain biking accident and fractured his hand, requiring surgery, and it was only 26 days before the official start of the season at St. Petersburg. As a result, McLaren suddenly needed to find a temporary driver to fill that replacement seat, and landed on former Alfa Romeo reserve driver Theo Pourchaire. With this announcement, Theo was off to the land of the free to race for McLaren, beginning at the legendary Grand Prix of Long Beach, gaining 11 positions from his starting spot on the way to an 11th place finish. Pourchaire followed up his IndyCar journey at Barber Motorsports Park, and was confirmed for the rest of the 2024 season, leaving David Malukas unfortunately without a seat. So now, it seems like Theo has finally got his shot, the perfect third amigo alongside Alexander Rossi and Pato O'Ward. Well, that's what we thought it would be like, until the introduction of a 19-year-old Indy NXT phenom by the name of Nolan Siegel. Siegel, fresh off an outstanding LMP2 win with United Autosports at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, had been competing part-time with Dale Coyne Racing in their number 18 Honda entry. Shortly before Pourchaire's first-time debut at the legendary Laguna Seca, he was notified that Siegel would be McLaren's replacement driver going forward, and the contract he had signed for the 24 season would essentially be null and void. As you can imagine, he was not particularly happy with this sequence of events, and said as much in an interview with French racing outlet Auto Hebdo. To be 100% transparent, McLaren had signed me to a multi-year contract to drive with them in IndyCar. And then, on the Tuesday morning before Laguna Seca, I learned from my manager that they had decided not to have me drive at Laguna Seca, as well as for the rest of the season. At first, I was very surprised. I didn't understand. I thought it was fake. We had only signed a few weeks before. I was disgusted. Now, for the sake of full transparency, Pourchaire would go on to walk back the statement a few days later, stating that he was disappointed in how grossly inaccurate his words and comments were portrayed in the interview. In his follow-up, he questioned Auto Hebdo's reporting of the situation, and this article was later wiped from the platform entirely. So let's give Theo the benefit of the doubt here. Maybe the reporter in the magazine took quotes entirely out of context. If that is the case, then Auto Hebdo has a lot of questions to answer about their journalistic practices. But at the same time, it's hard to blame him for being disgusted with the way things turned out. But hey, at the very least, they seem to have patched things up for the most part. Theo was called back to McLaren after Alexander Rossi broke his thumb during opening practice at the Toronto Grand Prix, which leads us to yet another change in the McLaren IndyCar lineup for 2025, as on July 2nd, 2024, Christian Lundgaard was announced as a replacement for Alexander Rossi. Now, we won't dive in too deep on Christian Lundgaard, but as a former F1 prospect with 1 win, 2 pole positions, and 3 podiums in 43 career starts, he certainly earned his opportunity to join one of IndyCar's most popular teams. However, with all of this chaos, at some point we've got to wonder, where did this all start? Well, ladies and gentlemen, to answer that question, we've got to look at the active standoff between 2-time IndyCar champion, Alex Palou, Chip Ganassi Racing, and Arrow McLaren. See, back in July 2022, Arrow McLaren announced the surprise signing of Palou for the 2023 IndyCar season, which included a reserve driver role for McLaren's Formula One team, as long as it didn't interfere with Indy's schedule. In fact, they seem to have a solid deal in place, with Palou doing simulator testing and practice sessions for the F1 team, and attending the Miami Grand Prix as their reserve driver. This all changed on August 8th, when McLaren CEO Zach Brown was notified that Palou changed his mind and signed a 3-year extension with Chip Ganassi Racing, and locking him in through 2026. And let me tell you, McLaren was pissed, suing Palou for $23 million in damages and having some less than kind words to say about his decision. Arrow McLaren has been locked in this tussle for over a year now, and as a result, tossed their driver lineup into this constant cycle of musical chairs that we're seeing now. Now, from Palou's perspective, he believes that Arrow McLaren sold him a false bill of goods and promised him an F1 seat in the future, despite having Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris locked down through 2025. In fact, he stated in his response to the lawsuit that he'd never expressed interest in F1 until after he'd won his 2021 IndyCar title. And with only a reserve driver role available, he'd prefer to stay in IndyCar. Now, I don't know about y'all, but that sounds like a load of barnacles. Maybe McLaren did make some promises to Palou that they couldn't realistically keep, but at the same time, he'd still be in IndyCar at a highly competitive race-winning team with the added benefit of connecting him to the expansive Formula One fan base. Maybe I'm crazy here. It seems like the value far outweighs the consequences. Instead, it really seems like Chip Ganassi backed a dump truck of cash up to Palou's door, and the math changed. Will we ever know the exact reason why it changed? Maybe not until we get a tell-all podcast or docuseries from Palou somewhere down the line, or we get some kind of resolution to this lawsuit. But while we wait for that to happen, we can read the tea leaves enough to say that ever since Palou bowed out of his Arrow McLaren contract, we've seen nothing but chaos in their driver selection. And as Arrow McLaren's sporting director Tony Kanaan explained, it started last year with that driver, Palou, that decided not to come over and breach his contract. But with all that said, I would love to hear your thoughts about this situation. Who do you think has the strongest argument here? Is Palou right for bowing out of his contract with Arrow McLaren, or is McLaren right to sue Palou for breach of contract? Leave those down in the comments below for me to read through, as I promise you I will be reading them. But in any case, I hope you all enjoyed this dive into the chaos of McLaren's IndyCar lineup. And stay tuned for more topics around the racing world, as there's plenty to discuss. But until next time, folks, look up, keep going, and I'll be seeing you real soon.